In the vast expanse of space, one event has captivated the Earth like none other before it. That event is the moon landing. But some say it never really happened. So, was it an extraordinary leap for mankind? Or just a cunning illusion cloaked in darkness? Did they fake it to get a leg up on the Russians? Or the actual reason is something much more sinister? While history books tell us humans set foot on the lunar surface during the Apollo missions, some people reject it, and they bring some evidence to back their case. So today, we will present you with the facts and the evidence that gives birth to the moon landing conspiracies. And whether that evidence is enough to prove moon landing was a stage production orchestrated right here on Earth, that's for you to decide. But before we dive into the shady practices of NASA at that time and start poking the glaring holes in the official narrative, let us first at least go back in history to see what was going on. The moon landing took place during the height of the Cold War, a period of intense rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had reached several significant milestones in space exploration, including launching the first satellite, Sputnik, and sending the first human, Yuri Gagarin, into orbit. This ignited a fierce competition known as the space race. The Americans intensified their efforts to demonstrate their technological superiority, and to prove their dominance in space, they wanted to stick their flag on the moon, representing America as the sole superpower of this world. Making matters even more urgent, President John F. Kennedy set forth an ambitious objective in 1961, declaring that America would put a man on the moon before the end of the decade. The clock was ticking. So NASA immediately launched the Apollo missions, which involved meticulous planning, rigorous training, and cutting-edge 1960s technology. Over the years, the Apollo program faced numerous challenges and setbacks, starting with the tragic Apollo 1 mission, which resulted in the loss of 3 astronauts. However, with each subsequent mission, such as Apollo 8, NASA made significant progress. And finally, on July 20th, 1969, Apollo 11 accomplished this historic feat, with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin becoming the first humans to set foot on the moon. Supposedly, even Apollo 12 was successful, as another crew reached the moon on November 4th. Now that we've given the whole rundown of events, one thing is confirmed. They did try to make it to the moon, but that doesn't mean they were successful. Considering the pressure of JFK's proclamation and Russian rivalry, the Americans had all the motivation they needed to just fake the moon landing and the resources to do it. Remember, this is the 1960s, and technology was not very impressive. Even now, there are no real plans to send people to the moon because it's too much work, even when today's technology has progressed exponentially due to all the space missions and matured space technology. To put it simply, if it is still too difficult, how did they manage it back then? But that's just an opinion. Could be wrong, right? So let us look at the moon landing with a critical eye to see if it stands up to scrutiny. One of the notable observations made by skeptics is the absence of stars in the photographs captured on the lunar surface during the Apollo missions. This raises questions about why the photographs show a seemingly starless sky, despite the lack of atmospheric interference. In the vacuum of space, away from the Earth's atmosphere, the stars should have been clearly visible in the images. They point out that even in the darkest and clearest night skies on Earth, stars are easily discernible. NASA's explanation for this anomaly is that the photographs were taken in daylight conditions, where the lunar surface itself was highly illuminated by the sun. The camera settings were optimized to capture the fine details of the lunar terrain, resulting in overexposure that made the dim stars invisible in the photographs. However, some find it puzzling that no efforts were made to capture the stars separately or adjust the camera settings to accommodate the celestial background. They argue that considering the historical significance of being on the moon, it would have been expected for NASA to prioritize capturing the awe-inspiring view of stars from a celestial body other than Earth. Another aspect that raises doubts is the inconsistencies in the moon's gravity during the Apollo missions. The behavior and movement of the astronauts and objects on the lunar surface appear contradictory to what would be expected in a low-gravity environment. According to the official narrative, the moon's gravity is approximately 1/6 of Earth's gravity. However, some have pointed out instances where astronauts' movements seem to defy this reduced gravitational force. They question why the astronauts appear to move with similar ease as they do on Earth, without the expected slower and more exaggerated motions associated with reduced gravity. Critics also raise concerns about the behavior of objects dropped or thrown on the moon's surface. They claim that the objects fall too quickly and follow a trajectory similar to what would be expected on Earth, rather than exhibiting the slower and more parabolic path anticipated in a low-gravity environment. NASA's explanation for these inconsistencies includes citing factors such as the astronauts' spacesuits and the unfamiliarity of working in a different gravitational environment. They argue that the spacesuits, designed to provide protection and mobility, might have contributed to the appearance of normal movements. However, questions persist among some observers who find it difficult to reconcile these explanations with the expectations based on the moon's lower gravity. Whether these inconsistencies could be indicative of a staged moon landing where the astronauts were actually on Earth in a controlled environment designed to mimic the lunar surface. Another, more intriguing point raised by critics is the apparent absence of lunar dust on the landing module and the astronauts' boots. Considering the moon's surface is covered in a layer of fine dust known as regolith, this absence has led some to question the authenticity of the Apollo missions. According to the official narrative, the lunar module made a soft landing on the moon's surface, and the astronauts conducted several moonwalks, collecting samples and conducting experiments. However, if these activities did indeed take place, there should be visible traces of lunar dust on the landing module and the astronauts' boots. The lunar module's foot pads, designed to distribute the weight and prevent sinking into the lunar surface, should have left imprints and traces of regolith. Similarly, the astronauts' boots with their textured soles were expected to accumulate lunar dust during their walks on the moon. Yet, photographs and footage from the missions appear to show remarkably clean equipment and footwear. NASA has addressed these concerns by explaining that the lunar dust, while abundant, is not like ordinary Earth dust. The sharp, abrasive nature of regolith particles can cause them to cling to surfaces and penetrate seals, which poses risks to equipment and the astronauts' health. To mitigate these risks, special coatings and materials were used to minimize the adherence of lunar dust. Nevertheless, skeptics find it difficult to reconcile the explanations provided by NASA. They argue that the absence of expected traces of regolith raises doubts, and the question about the lack of imprints still remains unanswered. Another point of contention revolves around the lighting and shadows present in the photographs and videos captured during the Apollo missions. Skeptics argue that the lighting and shadow patterns depicted in the imagery are inconsistent with the conditions on the moon. According to the official narrative, the moon's surface is illuminated solely by sunlight. However, critics point to perceived anomalies in the lighting angles and shadows visible in the photographs. They argue that the presence of multiple light sources or inconsistent shadow directions suggests that artificial lighting may have been used. Couple this with the absence of stars in the lunar photographs, and you have got yourself in a fishy situation. NASA has provided explanations for these inconsistencies. They attribute the variations in lighting angles and shadows to the uneven lunar surface, the lack of atmosphere, and the reflectivity of the moon's surface. But the critics remain unconvinced, because the less detailed the something is, the easier it is to fake it. Maybe these minor yet intricate details in the photographs were omitted to make things easier for the film crew working in Hollywood to fake the moon landing. Perhaps the most well-known bone of contention is the famous flag planted on the lunar surface. Critics argue that the movement of the flag shown in the footage raises doubts about the authenticity of the moon landings. According to the official explanation, the flag appeared to be waving or fluttering in the videos due to the motion imparted during the planting process. NASA used a horizontal rod to hold the flag, and when it was fully extended, it caused the flag to appear as if it were fluttering. However, skeptics point out that the moon has no atmosphere and therefore no wind or air resistance to cause the flag to move that way. They argue that in a vacuum environment, the flag should remain motionless once it was planted. The apparent movement of the flag in the footage indicates that it was filmed on Earth, where air resistance would cause the flag to flutter. To put it simply, the flag movement contradicts the absence of atmospheric conditions on the moon. The flag controversy continues to be a subject of debate among skeptics, critics, and proponents of the moon landing theory, with each side offering their interpretations and explanations for the observed flag movement. We gave you just some of the criticisms, but we also gave you NASA's explanations for those criticisms regarding lighting, dust, gravity, flag, etc. All of the points mentioned thus far in the video can be countered by NASA. We already gave you both sides on these issues to be fair to our viewers. But now, let's move towards some issues that are way too suspicious, the issues that NASA and the government refuse to address or even acknowledge because they can't really give any good answers. Starting with the missing data. This issue has to do with the missing or damaged footage of the moon landing. It's reasonable to expect the highest degree of care regarding the footage of the first people on the moon, but for some reason, much of the data was lost to time. This data includes documents and testimonies. Moreover, there are notable discrepancies and controversies surrounding the availability and preservation of the original moon landing tapes. So, how about we start with what happened to the original Apollo 11 tapes? According to accounts, the original footage of the moon landing was recorded on high-quality telemetry tapes, which were then archived and stored by NASA. However, over time, it has been claimed that these original tapes suffered from various issues, including degradation, accidental erasure, or being reused for other purposes. Some reports suggest that NASA might have inadvertently recorded over the original tapes due to budget constraints and the lack of awareness of their historical significance. These explanations are not satisfactory at all. Basically, what NASA is saying, we don't even have the original footage anymore because we decided to record other things over the original moon landing footage since we couldn't afford new tapes. What can be so astronomically important that they had to reuse Apollo 11 tapes? How severe can a budget cut be? That it makes you dispose of the so-called giant leap for mankind? According to them, efforts to locate the missing original tapes have been met with challenges and limited success. James Oberg, a former space engineer and author, NASA initiated a search for the original tapes in the late 1980s but could not locate them. Why would a meticulous organization like NASA not have maintained a secure and easily traceable archive for such significant recordings? That will forever be a mystery to us all. But some might wonder that there are still copies available of the footage. So what if the original was not lost? Well, let's take a look at those copies. According to Richard Navsker, an engineer who led the team responsible for restoring the Apollo 11 tapes, the images broadcasted to the public during the moon landing were captured using slow-scan television (SSTV) technology, which transmitted low-resolution images for real-time viewing. Critics argue that low-quality images make it difficult to discern finer details and analyze the footage with precision. They question why higher-resolution copies or original recordings have not been made readily available for a thorough examination. Some skeptics suggest that the use of SSTV technology could have conveniently masked any potential flaws or inconsistencies in the footage. Remember, the more low-quality something is, the easier it is to be faked. But let's put the footage aside and move toward blueprints and documents regarding this extraordinary mission. The remarkable technological achievements seen during the Apollo missions have not been replicated or surpassed in subsequent space exploration endeavors. The absence of similar technological advancements raises doubts about the authenticity of the original moon landing. Critics argue that the Saturn V rocket, which was used to launch the Apollo missions, was a marvel of engineering and represented a significant leap forward in rocket technology. So, why such a powerful and advanced rocket has not been used again in subsequent missions, or why similar capabilities have not been replicated? Additionally, skeptics raise questions about the alleged loss or disappearance of blueprints, designs, and engineering specifications related to the Saturn V rocket and other Apollo-era technologies. The absence of these documents raises suspicions and suggests a deliberate attempt to conceal the truth. And so, our journey through the fascinating world of conspiracy theories surrounding the moon landing comes to a close. We have examined the doubts, scrutinized the evidence, and delved into the compelling arguments presented by skeptics and critics. But where does the truth lie? That's for you to decide. Thank you for joining us on this thought-provoking expedition. We invite you to share your thoughts, opinions, and any additional information in the comments section below. If there is a demand for further exploration of these topics, we may consider a follow-up episode to delve even deeper. Until then, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep unraveling the enigmas that surround us.